Book 9. Was it any good? The story. So we know by this point that Heroes' writing isn't exactly stellar. More often than not, they start up pretty okay to somewhat great, but get rushed towards the end by the time they should have developed more of the story. A lot of the books actually have really interesting concepts and ideas in them that don't really get fleshed out because their writing format restricts them from doing so. Usually what you're left with by the end are stories that are largely unsatisfying because they have to end it at a certain point. Stories that could have been really good or even fantastic, but are held back from really meeting their potential. With book 9, however, it's kind of the opposite. Here it started okay, continued poorly throughout the majority of the book, and then ended in a really cool way. It did something that I didn't think it would do. It got me to care about the story. Kind of. So to keep things short, Rune is being hunted down by Alphador and his subordinates, as he's the only person who can decipher runes left behind from the true almighty god or whatever. Alphador. Baldur and Hother chase them down while everyone finds a way to remove Baldur's invincibility so they can fight back. Loki and friends trick Hother into removing her invincibility. Rune later gets cursed by Alphador and is forced to meet his demands. They beat up a bunch of OCs, and in the end, it's revealed that the almighty god, the real Alphador, was Rune all along and that he's been responsible for every other book thus far. And Rune did all of this because he enjoys the stories of Fire Emblem heroes. You know he's evil because he likes face stories. Rune being the dude that was affecting all the other stories does recontextualize a lot of things both in an interesting aspect and a comedic aspect. Now it's canon that lines like these were because of his influence, which is really hilarious. You know, maybe some of the stories were purposely bad because they were written by a child. The Alphador we knew not really being the real Alphador had a lot of great foreshadowing. If even the supposed creator of all couldn't decipher runes, and it made sense that he was a fake of sorts, the Heimdallr hint the chapter prior where Loki says she would never betray Alphador, I thought that part was pretty well done. The book still had the issue of rushing towards a conclusion, but only up until the last chapter. After that is when all things broke loose and what's leading to stuff with Ragnarok. And to be quite I thought the ending of book 9 was executed really well. It doesn't make up for the rest of the book, though. I do like the twist, but it felt largely disconnected from the rest of the story. The idea of Alphador and Ragnarok and all that stuff was pretty sick, but what difference would have it made if we just started at that point? Would anything of substance really have changed? I think the only character that undergoes any change was Baldur, seeing as her invincibility was removed, but even then, it wasn't even that consequential to the grand scheme of the book, and this is on top of pretty awful pacing issues throughout the story, too. We spent so much time running around in the forest to try and fight back against Baldur, and by the point that arc was wrapped up, it felt like we were just messing around until we eventually made our way to Alphador while fighting against other OCs, and that was it. Book 9 really felt like it didn't have any direction with its story, which is why it feels so disconnected. Some characters also just disappear after a while, like Baldur and Hother. Thor is only in the first chapter of the book, and that's it. I just don't think most of the characters had much of anything to do besides Loki, really. I think Loki was really fun, but she also took up a lot of the book's time that probably could have been used on the rest of the cast, and I can't really say much of anything about the rest of the cast because they either didn't do a lot or they just kind of existed. Except Baldur, she's cool and fun for the time she was around. I like her a lot. I don't think the ending alone makes up for the entirety of the book, and if anything, I think the ending would have been a lot better if Rune was at least a bit more involved. The twist definitely helped him out a good bit, but I feel like I'd probably care more about him if he was more present in the story. But to play devil's advocate, there's going to be a part 2 to this book. The story isn't wrapped up since, presumably, we're continuing from the ending and going into stuff with Ragnarok. A lot of things that didn't really work out here could probably be more developed in the following portion of the story, and if it is, then I'm willing to be less critical of it. It's also the direction I was hoping they'd do for a while because face stories do suffer due to lackluster pacing and writing constraints. The fact that they're even attempting it makes me a bit more positive that it could end up being something really great in the end. They already have a great foundation with Rune and Alphador, so it's off to a strong start in that regard, but it's hard to say what that's going to look like in a year or so. Because of that, I give this book a thank you for the orbs, but now I gotta wait for part 2 to see whether this book amounts to anything in the end, which is a worse score than that of book 8's. For the time being. Everything from here on out will depend on whether they can actually stick the landing. I'm willing to wait before I fully judge it in its entirety. Them giving extra time to flesh out the story is really cool, and I'm actually interested in seeing where a phase story goes, which is not something I thought I'd be saying 9 years into the game. I think it would be unfair to judge it at this moment because of that. That said, if what follows this book ends up being mediocre or really bad, then it would equally ruin book 9 in its entirety. However, if they manage to tie up everything in a satisfying way, then I'll end up packaging book 9 alongside book 10 at that point in time. But as far as book 9 is on its own accord, I don't think it was that good overall. So what did they mean by our first free male OC being evil? The new heroes. Okay, I'll just say it. This has probably been one of the largest mixed bags of a book lineup we've had in a long time. Back in Book 8, I felt as if it was going in a pretty solid direction. There were a lot of new additions that people have been waiting ages for, alts for overdue characters, and for the most part, the lineups were decently diverse. Book 8 definitely had issues with alt releases and lineups at times though, believe me, it was not perfect. But it felt like they were balancing decisions that would still make them money while catering to the base of people that just wanted new things to look forward to. And to give them credit where it's due, we also had a decent amount of that this book. Long overdue alts for characters people have been begging for years was so awesome to see. Some base versions of characters that people gave up on expecting that got in after all this time. It's always super great to see that stuff happen. But this book also had an obscene amount of repeat characters. Multiple additions in less than a year that really could have waited on it. This is just a list of units I can remember off the top of my head that got alts less than a year apart. There's definitely more than this. It's so much more than many of the other books, and it honestly made some of the banners less interesting to me. I think it was also exasperated by the fact that some of them were just the same thing but newer. It just felt like we kept getting the same stuff again and again and again. And to be clear, I don't have any problems with any Fire Emblem character or even specific games. They could spam any game throughout a book and I'd totally be cool with it if the character choices were a lot more spread out. And it's not even an issue of popular characters getting content is a bad thing. It's the spacing of it that just sucks to me, and I would imagine a lot of other people. It definitely comes off as them playing things too safe, which I can understand, but I do think it becomes too much after a while. And I could be in the minority with this, but I think it's fair to say it gets exhausting when they keep doing this. It's definitely not helped by new heroes banners having mostly asset alts either, which means even less room for newer additions. But as far as the new hero banners are concerned, they were okay. As usual, it's really nice to see more new characters get added into the game. Genealogy was primarily made up of new characters. Shadows of Valentia basically wrapped up its playable cast. And while the Ancient banner was only made up of alts, I think it was a really fun idea for a banner, although it probably should have just been a seasonal instead. We got more engaged characters. That was really nice to see. Some more Thracia characters. That banner. The new hero banners definitely suffered from a lot of repeats, but at least there was usually something to look forward to. I'm glad they at least gave other characters a spotlight, even if it meant having more repeat units this year. Also, I didn't know where to put this in, but Entwined heroes. They're fine. Just like Aided, they're largely ignorable, which I think is a good thing. They also brought back limited time duos, and as conflicted as I am about it, I'm willing to give it a pass since they're only doing it for anniversary stuff. I would have preferred if they weren't limited, but considering the state of normal hero banners, I think that would have been asking for too much. And speaking of limited heroes, there's the limited heroes. I think my sentiments are more or less the same as the normal hero banners. The new additions were really great to see. Some units even getting their first alt was really awesome. I do think some of the lineups were playing it too safe, which I think hurt some of the banners as a result. It's more expected given they're seasonal, so if nothing else, I think it's just nice that we even got content for some characters that were otherwise forgotten. Maybe it will be different next book. There were also the emblems, and similarly to last year, I think they're the most exciting banners we get nowadays. Their ring effects add so much to the game, and I think they check all the right boxes for everybody, but as far as the effects themselves go, I think it's mostly good. Last year, Celica's ring broke the game in half, and I feel like ever since then, they've been both strong and reined back, which I think is good. Although Corrin's ring is a double-edged sword on that front. Inflicting a bunch of ice and vert terrain is really nice to have for a lot of the game, but can be really annoying to face yourself as it slows down the game tremendously. I do think it's more of a positive than a negative at least. Lynn's ring giving range units a lot more range every 2 turns is pretty cool, and I think it wasn't as over the top as it could have been. It's just a solid ring to have on almost any team. Erica's ring having a once per phase dual phase brave effect is pretty fun. The potency of it will vary across units, but it can be really good with some specific units. On armored units, it can become really annoying to face. I still don't see it as anything crazy though, but it is nice to have. And Micaiah's ring I think is just really convenient. Cleansing penalties and healing an ally with an assist and getting another action is really strong. And overall, they're just pretty fun additions. The emblems are definitely the best thing this book has going for it. Although that might apply to every book moving forward, to be quite H. Still, if there's anything else this year has going for it over book 8, it's this. They brought back the T theme, so that's a massive dub. That in their Mythic selection, I guess, but Book 8's Mythics catalog was really bad. Last year, we just had Lumera as our only non-OC Mythic, but she was already in the game that prior year. She then got a copy and pasted alt 3 months later, which soured me on the Mythic even more. Everyone else was an OC that book, and I have no problem saying it was the weakest we've ever had, because on top of OCs taking up every slot, we effectively got 0 new characters on the Mythic side. This book, we got Athos, which was not only a really good choice, but it was also something entirely new. And Lyn as a horse. That one is just funny more than anything else. Although doing the bare minimum of adding one new non-OC mythic was already going to put it above Book 8's lineup regardless, so good job, I guess. The rest of the mythic lineup was to be expected. Par for the course, story relevant units becoming mythics as usual, which is fine, I've accepted it. As long as they give out something new each year, then I'm okay with it. And then there's the legendaries, and it's genuinely the most conflicting batch I think we've ever gotten. There's stuff like Diamant, which is cool, Sakura's a Fates Royal, which is fine, whatever. But then you have the duality between Ira and Black Knight, which is really messing with me. Ira, in my mind, was the point where I genuinely believe they ran out of legendary options, and the release of legendary Black Knight made me think they still got ideas. Maybe it's a mix of both. It's definitely the most unpredictable batch we've had in a while, which keeps it interesting at least. Last book, it was primarily avatars and Camilla, so if nothing else, it's good to see they always have surprises in store. Whether they're good or bad surprises, I'll leave that up to you. Honestly, I think the best way I could sum up the entirety of the book's banners is that it was way too safe. Even with some of the more outlandish choices, there's still one more new Heroes banner before Book 9 ends. It could be the best banner lineup they've ever done, but it wouldn't change how I feel about Book 9's lineups overall. As far as Book 9 banners go, I think it was fine, I guess. It had its highs and lows that surpassed those lows, but to say it was all bad would be disingenuous, and someone out there is going to like something here no matter what. I think as long as people are happy with it, then that's all that matters. Still, I do hope next book will keep things interesting at least, in a good way. And preferably not to drop a power crep baby Camilla before she even turns 1 year old. The free stuff. I think where the banners faltered a bit, the free-to-play side of things picked up the slack. On the Grand Hero side of things, we got a lot of really cool additions, including some characters that people have been waiting for a while. Units like Gris, Vida, Fafnir, Bruno. A lot of people love those. We got some fun additions like Grammel, Hytaka, and Jetta, and the rest of the GHBs in Kahulin, Ancient Zane, Exilus, and Dagdar were pretty cool to see. But as far as power levels were concerned, they were significantly weaker across the board compared to Book 8. Now, granted, expecting another Marnie level Grand Hero battle would have been asking for too much. Although Grammel comes really close, but Book 8 also had some pretty solid GHBs besides her, like Valadar and, okay, it was mostly Marnie. At the very least, the PRF some of them came with were pretty fun. But yeah, the lineup was cool overall, even if on the weaker side power-wise. I'm glad all of them were put into the game this year. It was pretty neat. And as for the Tempest trial units, I think this is where they stepped up their game. Not because most of them were good, but because their inheritables were genuinely fantastic, even beyond free-to-play standards. Majority of the inheritable weapons we got from the Tempest trial units were extremely strong to the point where you could really make so many units viable with them. The obvious standout was Johanna Lance from Saber, since it has reflect built into it. Balthus's lance is also pretty solid since it could give so much true damage and true damage reduction. Bouquet Baton was a really great supportive staff that healers needed for a while at this point. Sword units finally got options with Serving Knife and Arena Sword, both of which are incredibly strong weapons both in support and combat. We recently got Ninja Shez, and his inheritable axe being a dual phase brave weapon with true damage and true damage reduction is pretty sick. Devoted Cut Plus from Hubert is also pretty good, and Fagato and Innis's inheritable weapons, well, they tried their best. And as for the ones with PRF weapons, it was mainly just Winter Eikthenir and Halloween Ranulf because they're beasts. Eikthenir's was just slightly weaker than his mythic version, which at the time wasn't too shabby. Ranulf's PRF is pretty solid because of the support and extra combat gimmicks he has built into his weapon. If Grammel didn't drop this year, I probably would have said he was the best Grail unit of Book 9. And overall, it was a genuinely fantastic lineup of characters and weapons. It may not have reached Book 8's peaks in terms of power level, but I think Book 9 was a massive step up across the board since most of them were contributing something useful. I'm very happy with how they handled the free units this year. What, can't a guy be happy for once in this video? Miscellaneous stuff that I couldn't fit into the other categories. The reinforcement slot update, featuring the safety fence upgrade. This was simultaneously the most nothing update and the most absurd update we had in a long time. The reinforcement slots are fine, but I think are largely inconsequential to the mode overall. They just kind of exist to me, and that's fine. Safety fence 2 really took the spotlight because it was horrifically unbalanced and led to Emblem Lyn messing up the mode for about 8 months. Featuring Elm, I think it would have been fine if Baldur and Hother or any other applicable mythic kept it in check way earlier into the year, but it did sour it in my eyes at the time. Nowadays, it's way more balanced and I actually like how it functions now. That said, I don't think they should have dropped it in that state, but I get why it was supposed to work with the reinforcement slots. Can't wait for Safety Fence 3 upgrade. There's also the Divine Code 6, and I like these a lot. Some of the paths don't hold up as well these days. and some were just bad from the jump, but the quality for many of them have still held up, definitely helped by the rearms and attuned units we have in there. Thank you for being cool with those, Faye. Your Time to Shine was our premier game mode of the book, and I'm sorry, but it's your time to pack it up. I feel like they saw Seer Snare and tried to replicate that with bonuses, and I don't think it worked out that well. Even when I first played it, it felt like one of those modes that was going to lose its novelty really quickly, and even now I don't find it to be all that fun, but I'll give them credit where it's due. You actually have to play the mode this time. I'm still not forgiving them for auto affinity battles. That was so bad. But yeah, maybe it's just not for me. Maybe Book 10 will drop something that piques my interest. We also got the very long overdue updates for Holoforms and Binding Worlds. Holoforms implemented an update that lets you get version 8 or later skills on the highest chamber, which makes the process of getting the skills you want so much easier. I really wish they did this sooner because there were so many units I chose not to get since I couldn't get any good skills. This update was a game changer and I'm so happy they implemented it. Meanwhile, Binding Worlds increased the amount of units you could run into per map and made it easier to get friends. That also means it's easier to get stuff you don't want. It's still not consistent, but it's still way better than what it was before the update. I'll gladly give them credit where it's due. And, that's all we had. It really wasn't a lot, and to be honest, I think that kinda checks out. It definitely felt like Book 9 didn't have a lot going on for the most part, and compiling it for the video puts it into perspective. There's still the possibility of an announcement happening for the last new Heroes banner of the book, but I think they'll hold off on it until the Book 10 Fate channel. They're so close together anyway that I can't imagine Book 9 overall will change 1 week before Book 10 drops. Although if they do, then this never happened.
Grammel.
Overall, I think Book 9 wasn't the best, but it could have been worse. There are plenty of positives that came out of Book 9, and I'm glad they did those things. However, between the story quality, the banner lineups, and the overall questionable game design choices, I think what we ended up with in the end was a book that made a lot more people apathetic to the game, or maybe that's just me. I genuinely believe this game needs something new, and not on a small scale. Fate needs a new game mode on the level of Aether Raids or Summoner Duels, something large enough in scale that could help revitalize more interest in the game. I know Aether Raids and especially Summoner Duels aren't up everyone's alleys, but the game modes we've been getting just weren't that substantial besides Seer Snare, and even then, that mode only runs once every 4 months. I think it would be a good time to try as Fortune's Weave is coming out next year, and there might be people that download Fae just for those characters. I'll remain hopeful that IS comes up with something, because it's not like they couldn't. I think when they put their minds to it, they can make something really great. So just like with the main story, I'll choose to remain hopeful about it. Now, as far as what I said last time with the other books, there are concerns I still have with the game as is, but I'm hoping throughout the course of Book 8 that they'll try and improve upon the game in a lot of ways that makes the player base a lot less apathetic to the game overall. Or who knows, maybe they'll run it into the ground even more. I don't know if I want to comment on that, but maybe I could hope for Book 9 to pick up the slack on that, because you definitely want people to enjoy the game. I'll continue not to comment on that.